You have to stop fortune telling in your relationship. It's one of the biggest pitfalls people fall into when trying to resolve issues and break the pattern of toxicity in their relationships. Now, what is fortune telling? It's when you assume the rest of the narrative of a situation before it's even happened. When you put your opinions on your partner, you impose them on them. You start speaking for them. You start assuming you know the outcome every time, and you start acting proactively from a negative standpoint or perspective based off of your assumptions, to where you're literally manifesting your own negative outcomes. Now, just because you are fortune telling and assuming the outcome of things, does that mean you're wrong necessarily? No, because there's a reason why you're fortune telling, right? There's a reason why you're making these assumptions, because there's probably past history, right? You guys have a pattern. Life and relationships work in momentum, works in patterns that builds and builds and builds. So I'm pretty sure you have some valid information from the past that may support whatever this assumption you're making is. But when you always assume the negative or the negative outcome, you're always going to be adding, contributing negative components to the equation that ensures that it actually comes out to be a negative result. When in reality, you should be assuming the positive until proven negative, right? Give your partner a chance. If you really believe that they love you and you love them, then assume the best out of them, not the worst in them. If you really believe in yourself and your own value, then assume the best for the outcome you can get. Don't assume you're going to get a poor result because you're not worth something, or whatever the case is, whatever lies you're telling yourself about your own value. So many people continue to struggle and go through painful situations in their relationships because they're doing too much assuming, too much fortune telling, predicting the future without having the factual components to validate their end conclusions. And even with the factual components, right? Let's review that for a second. See, some people say, well, I do have the facts. My partner did this, that, and the third, and that means this. So I already know this is what's going to happen. This is going to be the outcome. Where your partner has done some things that you both can agree that definitely happened. But the part where you start fortune telling is you start assuming what that maybe action meant to your partner without getting clarity from your partner. And you make your own assumptions as to why or what the backing is for them, what it meant to them. You assume it and come to your own conclusions. Let me give you an example. Let's say you and your partner are really going at it, right? Getting into it, arguing and having a big blow up to the point where your partner becomes overwhelmed and they say something like, I can't do this. And they walk away aggressively, leave the house, right? To just get away from the situation. Where we all can agree, your partner got fed up, said, I can't do this. And they walked away. They left the conversation. That's a fact. But where the fortune telling comes in is you now say, well, because they did that, that means they don't really love me and they don't want to do this anymore with me in this relationship, and they're going to potentially leave me. Where you took the fact that your partner was really fed up and said, I can't do this, and walked away, right? And then you started to assume what that meant for your partner. You assumed from your own perspective of a negative outlook that your partner saying they can't do this anymore and walking away meant they don't want to be with you anymore, right? That they don't want to do this relationship with you anymore. But in reality, to your partner, it just meant I can't do this conversation anymore. I can't do this arguing anymore. And I need to get away for a moment to clear my head. Even though they didn't communicate that, that's on them. They should have communicated that, right? But you made an assumption about what that moment meant to them just based off of what you perceived in that situation, instead of going to your partner, maybe when they were more calmed down, and you can follow up with them and ask better questions. Hey, what did you mean by that when you said that? Do you not want to do this relationship anymore? Or were you just overwhelmed? I want to understand and make sure we're on the same page. We're taking that approach gives you a better opportunity to not continue to build on a negative narrative that might run away with you and take you down a rabbit hole. And instead, you go what you know for sure right now is that your partner was upset and said they can't do this and walked away. But you leave it open-ended to say, hey, let me go give them a chance to calm down and then follow up and get further clarification as to what that meant for them, so I don't start to create a narrative that's not accurate in my mind based off my own perceptions. Moral of the story, Never assume the rest of the story for your partner, and don't complete the rest of the story without your partner's input and involvement, especially if the narrative you're creating is a negative one. Negativity will never help you get sustainable, positive outcomes. But let me say this as well. You also don't want to delude yourself, right? And start fortune telling a really positive narrative to yourself that doesn't have the components to support that either, right? You don't want to lie to yourself to make yourself stay in a relationship that might be toxic for you, telling yourself it's going to be different this time, or your partner's going to make this big change, right? And start fortune telling the rest of the journey without their input, without their actions to back up what you want to believe. So less fortune telling, less assuming of what your partner's going to do and assuming the outcome, and then reacting accordingly with missing information, and get more clarity instead. Become inquisitive and curious to go learn and understand, to get more hard truths versus the ones you're creating on your own without your partner's input. Let's get it.